Welcome to tape number 10 of our series called Inside Leisure World. I'm Bill Doan, your host, and this is the April show. It will be running this entire month. And if you remember earlier in the year, we made a request, all of the people who involved with the show made a request that if you had an interesting story or an interesting hobby, something that you would like to relate to the rest of Leisure World, give us a ring, and if it sounded interesting, why, we would put you on the show. And today, the lady that called me had an interesting story, and then something else that I found to be of great interest was the fact that her son, Bill Coleman, is an employee and a very excellent electrician and sound technician who works for the Golden Rain Foundation as an employee. He talked his mother into coming to Leisure World for some interesting reasons. So we've got some 2 or 3 interesting stories. Now I want to start out with Bill. And Bill, tell us a little bit about why you got your mother to join Leisure World and how long she's been here. And
well, I've been working at Leisure World for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years May 15th. And when I started working there, I thought it was a great community, and the longer that I've worked there, the more I found that it is truly a wonderful place. And I thought that my mom would fit in perfectly. There's so many clubs and organizations and nice people, and I just thought it'd be a great place for her.
Well, that's great, and we're so glad that she's here. And Alice, when you talked to me, you told me that of a very odd coincidence, which is one of these things that would happen maybe once in a lifetime, many lifetimes.
Yeah.
And I wish you could tell us all a little bit about this wonderful story that you.
Well, I think I'll start off by showing you a rather ordinary can, but metal, and it has some pretty ducks on it. I found this can, and it was after the Christmas season of '88, and my husband had either retired already or was getting ready to retire, I can't quite recall, and made a lot of beautiful woodworking. He made rocking horses for the grandchildren and chairs, rocking chairs, and a lovely lyre music stand for the daughter that plays the violin, and tables and all kinds of things. I guess he was getting a little, wanting to spread out a little bit more. So he said, I think that I'll carve a duck and paint it. So as I walked down to get some groceries early in the morning on a trash day, and there were a lot of Christmas cans, red cans that had had cookies and cakes and things like that in them, but they're a dime a dozen. But when I spotted this, I thought of my husband and all those pretty ducks. Maybe he could get some ideas. So I brought it home, and it kind of rattled with some junk, and we threw it out on the kitchen table and found some hairpins and safety pins and combs and just old things. And I was just about to swoop it off into the wastebasket when I spotted a little shiny object in the bottom of it. And so I went for that object, and here is the most unusual thing that's really ever happened in my life. It was an Alpha Chi Omega fraternity pin in with all this junk. And it so happens that I belonged to the Alpha Chi fraternity when I was in college. So I knew that it was valuable, and I knew that it belonged to somebody that didn't want to throw it away. So I started investigating. I wrote to the national headquarters. Now all this is going to take up to 6 months to do all these things. I wrote to national headquarters. First of all, I should backtrack. We couldn't read the name. On every pin, the name is engraved when you are initiated. And it's very small, and we couldn't read it. So I took it to a jeweler's, and with their magnifying glasses and stuff, they found out what it was. It was an unusual name. So I wrote to national headquarters in Indianapolis, Indiana, asked if they had an Alpha Chi pin had been issued to that person, and by any chance, if they had her married name, if it was long enough ago that she'd been married, and if they by any chance had her address. Well, eventually, things take quite a while to big organizations like that. Eventually, I got a letter back. Yes, she had donated. Yes, they had her married name, and yes, they had her address. And she lived in Topanga Canyon, about 65 miles from where I live. This happened in Southgate, California. And so, briefly, I'll write you the letter that I wrote her after finding out that she was there. I wrote, I won't give her name, but anyway, if you went to college in the Midwest in the mid-1930s, and your name is that, at that time was Mary Worsthorn, very odd name, I have some very important and hopefully happy news for you. I also went to school in the Midwest at approximately the same time, so undoubtedly we are about the same age. If I have found the right person and you care to write to me, identify yourself to my satisfaction, then I will tell you what this is all about. Okay, so I got back this letter, which, I tore it, which is rather a cold letter. Dear Mrs. Coleman, I received your note concerning my identification. There must be some gimmick, but I shall, see, she thought I was a come-on of some kind, but I shall respond because I am very curious. I am Mary Worstheiser, Mrs. A.G. Curtis. Now, I did attend Mount Union College in Alliance, Ohio, from 1932 to 1936. I am an Alpha Chi Omega and a past president of Panhellenic Council. I taught at State Junior High School, and for 3 years upon graduation, married after graduation, and moved to Lisbon, Ohio. We left Lisbon in '41 and moved to California, which has become our permanent home. Can you use some happy news? So that was her response. And she did identify herself, and I found out that she had been initiated very nearly at the same time that I was, and even in the same part of the country. I went to a small college in Kansas. So then I had to find out what we could do about getting her a pen. I wasn't going to drive way out there and just hand it to her. So that year, the Alpha Chi Omega National Fraternity had their one big annual meeting in Palm Springs, above all places. I mean, it's all over the country, you know. But that year it was in Palm Springs. So I wrote to national headquarters again and said that would it be possible that I could present her pen at National Convention? And they wrote me back they would be delighted. They sent us an invitation, both of us, and we had never met, and I'd had the pen all the time. So anyway, we did go together. She didn't pick me up, but I met her. It was out at Palm Springs, and I didn't drive that far. So I met her, and we went out there, and we were given a standing ovation. That was the first time they had ever had anything like that happen. Now, how her pen got in this can in Southgate, she had had all of her jewelry stolen out of her home 6 years previously, and had reported it to the police, and never had had one word of anything. How it got from Topanga Canyon to Southgate in a throwaway can, I'll never know, and nobody else will. But she got her pin back, and I want to show you here at the convention. That is my pin. That's my sorority pin. And we were both given our 50-year pins that year on the stage of the National Convention with over 1,000 women there, and it was a very, very thrilling thing.
See if our cameraman can get a close-up of this. There we are. It's a beautiful pin.
And those pins, when I was initiated, I want to show you just one thing, sir, how small the name is on the bottom. There's my name. You probably can't read it, and I couldn't read hers. And
I'm lucky to see that there's a pin there on my eyesight. Oh, that is beautiful. I can see how small the writing would have to be.
They're always engraved. And I made a little investigation myself. My pin was $100 with the guard when I was initiated. Those pins now are about $500.
Oh my goodness.
And those are real pearls in there.
Well, Alice, we're just about ready to
and they gave us this that morning too. That's a flyer, you see.
Yeah. I have one quick question. Did your husband ever make the duck?
I don't think he ever did carve
the duck.
He did carve some ducks. I'm not sure if that's one of the style that he carved or not, but he did carve some beautiful ducks.
Yeah, he was a very, and that is, I just brought that in case you wanted to see it. That's my initiation.
Well, Alice, we do have to go out to talk with Ray Jarris, our remote person who has the segments that we do inside Leisure World. But I certainly want to thank you, and thank you, Bill, for bringing her. This has really been an experience, and that's
an exciting story.
The series of coincidences which caused that event to happen. You know, it's somebody else is watching, I think. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ray Jarris is going to take us to the Historical Society today, and I'm looking forward to hearing Ray's interviews. They're always very interesting and sparkling and informative, and that's really what this show is all about.
Oh, hi, Bill. How you doing down there at the studio? Hey, we are here inside Leisure World at the new Leisure World Historical Society. Now, Historical Society, well, after all, this place has been here 30 years, and we're figuring to be here at least another 30. So the idea came to a Mr. Kenneth Walker that we should have some sort of a collection of all the information that's available now, because a lot of it just keeps getting thrown away, and 30 years is a long time. So I'm going to go in here, and we're going to talk to Mr. Walker and find out what the Historical Society is about, and what they have, and what else there is to know about it. Okay? We'll see you there. Mr. Walker, how are you? How do you do? I am Ray Jarris. I'm with a program called Inside Leisure World that is produced right here at Leisure World and at Comcast Channel 3 in Seal Beach. And now Bill Dillon is over at the studio, and we're just going to converse back and forth, and you know, you have any comments you want to make direct to Bill, well, you just go right ahead. But anyway, I understand that this Historical Society was your brainchild. Why don't you go ahead and tell us how it started, how you came to be here at Leisure World, and whatever you can tell us about the Historical Society and its purpose.
All right. I am a relatively new resident of Leisure World. I moved in 1992. But I knew a good deal about it because my parents were initial move-ins in 1962.
Well, they were pioneers.
I had been out here many times to visit them, and when they died, I had a choice between staying in a retirement community I lived in outside Baltimore or moving out to Leisure World. I decided to move out to the Leisure World.
Hey, I don't blame you. I lived in Baltimore.
Well, that's good. When I got here, I knew about the unique character of this community, and I am a retired historian. And I was rather disturbed that this community was now approaching 30 years of age, and that there were records and memories of all kinds that I thought it was important to be preserved.
Yeah, very good idea.
And as a consequence, although almost immediately, I just published a little notice in the Leisure World News and indicated that I thought that we should have a historical society dedicated to the preservation of records and perhaps offering programs relating to the early history of the community.
Yeah. Mr. Walker, we are going to take a moment then and talk to Thea Neal, Mrs. Neal. Okay. It's certainly been a pleasure, and we'll get Mrs. Neal on camera, and we'll be back to you.
All right.
All right? Mm-hmm. So, Mrs. Neal, how are you? Well, you've heard who I am.
Right.
And so I'm going to sit down and let you tell us what it is you do here at the Historical Society and what kind of records you have and what you do with them.
Okay, well, it's amazing what we do have, because the first few years that we met as a group, we did mostly talking. But when things started coming in, we've been inundated.
Was that once you got a place to be?
Right.
Yeah, that kind of helps, doesn't it?
The two main people that have given us things is Fred Cooper and Ethel Anderson. So that started a nucleus of what we have. And right now we have, we want to go back to the earliest times in the 60s, and letters to Washington, D.C. to the...
I thought you were going to say letters to George Washington.
No,
not that old. Well, this has been a very interesting time, and I'm sorry, we're going to have to return to Bill at the station. And Mr. Walker, would you come on over here a minute, and we'll all gather around and say goodbye to Bill Doan over at the station.
Okay.
What's going on in here?
I'd like you to take to him a brochure of our activities in the Leisure World Historical Society.
Okay.
And
I'll certainly do that.
this tells there are copies available. Any resident wants one can come in anytime to this office and pick it up. And we'd like to have them join us and share in our activities.
Fine, fine.
We're open 2 days a week, on Tuesday morning and Thursday morning from 9:30 to 11:30.
Okay. Mr. Walker, thank you very much. And Mrs. Neal, thank you very much. And it's back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Ray. That was very, very informative. And I am going to have to take this gentleman up on his offer, because my parents pioneered Leisure World. They came in as some of the very first move-ins in 1962. So I'm sure that I would find this very fascinating. And I certainly enjoyed your presentation. Thanks again for bringing another excellent interview to be incorporated into this series. Starting with our February show, we've been fortunate to have the services of Hank Barto, which has been our musical portion of the show, and the response has been very, very wonderful for this very talented person who can sing and play the keyboard as well as accompany singers. We're really fortunate to have him here, and I was delighted to find out that my views are also shared by a lot of our viewers. So backed by popular demand is Hank Barto.
It had to be you. It had to be you. I wandered around and finally found the somebody who could make me be true, could make me be blue, even be glad just to be sad thinking of you. Some others I've seen might never be mean, might never be cross or try to be boss, but they wouldn't do. But nobody else gave me a thrill. With all your faults, I love you still. It had to be you, a wonderful you. It had to be you. Yeah, a little vibraphone. Some others I've seen might never be mean, might never be cross or try to be boss, but they wouldn't do. But nobody else gave me a thrill. With all your faults, I love you still. It had to be you, a wonderful you. It had to be you. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was a wrap-up of our final, or our last show, and I thought I might give you a little bit of insight as to what we're going to be doing for the next show. I'm a past president of the Leisure World Garden Club, and I think one of the real attributes to Leisure World is its flowers. And so next month we are going to be going with Ray Jarris to the annual Leisure World Flower Show, which is held in Clubhouse 2 on the third Monday of April every year. And we're going to go and visit this flower show and see all of the beautiful flowers that have been grown here in Leisure World by the Leisure World residents and members of the Garden Club. So you want to be sure to stay or keep yourself appraised of the schedule, which appears in the Leisure World News, submitted every week by our beautiful Robin Fort Linky, so that the residents can find out which of their shows will be appearing. Remember that if they're in italics, they are ones that are generated by the Leisure World Producers organization, and these are the ones which do feature Leisure World. There are other shows on the public access, of course, which will be of interest, and those are also included in this schedule that is in your Leisure World News.